Last video, we looked at how the American West and Southeast dealt with the Decree of 2057. Today, we look at the convoluted mess that is the American Northeast. So, let's start back over at the Decree of 2057. For this video's purposes, the Northeast includes sectors 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 11, and 12, as well as Columbia. The first thing that happens up north is that Sector 12, Northern Maine, just decides to join Canada. Capricci had made a deal with the Canadian government that gave some of the border regions the option to join Canada, and Sector 12 takes advantage of this real quick. What I don't believe I mentioned last video is that Capricci gave each sector a provisional capital. For Sector 11, that capital was New York City. New York's officials met and, far outnumbering the rest of the sector, voted to change the sector's name to New York and keep the provisional capital as the New York Republic's new capital. Now, the states around New York start to feel a bit patronized by their new rulers who more or less just drowned them out. The day after New York organizes, Massachusetts declares independence, followed by Vermont, New Hampshire, and what is left of Maine. New Jersey follows suit the next day, but as a third faction, not at war with the New England League, but not under the same government. The New York Civil War had begun. Meanwhile, further west, Chicago and Milwaukee band together to form the Lakefront Republic. By the late 2050s, Chicago and Milwaukee have grown towards each other and could be considered one megalopolis, although the residents would prefer to think otherwise. On November 12th, the Chicago-Milwaukee megalopolis ditches Sector 2 and goes out on their own. Since they have a relatively strong economy and higher population for the area, no one really messes with them quite yet. Sector 2 hasn't even fully organized yet, so they just let the lakefront cities go. Wisconsin, yes, really, forms out of Sector 2, trying to avoid what happened in New York by combining their names. There is one problem, though, one of Capricci's many oversights. Southern Michigan is part of Sector 2. Wisconsin kind of just neglects to rule over Southern Michigan, and eventually Southern Michigan gets the hint and sets up the Ford League, a cooperative alliance among all the counties that Sector 2 once controlled. Now, what might just be the absolute memeiest day in this whole timeline is November 20th, 2057. Why? Well, that's when Sector 10's government meets in Cincinnati and renames the region the Commonwealth of Ohio. Yes, the meme is real. Ohio has gotten thick and is only going to get thicker. The next day, November 21st, Ohio's rival is born, the Midwest Conglomerate, which forms out of Sector 2 and has sway over the region from Nebraska all the way to the Indiana-Ohio border. But Ohio's leader, President Brian Resnick, is an ambitious man. He realizes that America is, by this point, pretty much destined to be a hostile place, and he wants to do everything he can to make sure Ohio comes out on top. So, he does the only sensible thing and forms a political party, Reichs Legion. The Legion's purpose is to promote Ohioan supremacy over the northern U.S., and to seek to secure the nation from outside threats. Resnick's Legion is especially hostile to Noosa's communist government, but that's further down the line. For now, we're in 2058, when Resnick mobilizes Ohio to war against the Midwest Conglomerate over an incident in which Midwest soldiers fired on Ohioan civilians that definitely was not staged at all. The Ohio-Midwest War is declared in January 2058 and is over by April. The Midwest's government is fairly ineffective, and they were not ready for war at all. They lose Indiana and Illinois, and their leader, President Mike Surrey, is ousted in favor of the Unionist politician Omar Wendow, immediately after the Treaty of St. Louis. 2 days after the treaty, Wendow rebrands the Midwest Conglomerate as the Platte Republic, relocates the capital to Lincoln, and turns his sights westward into the Great Lawless Desert. Ohio, meanwhile, does not take a back seat in American politics. The Ford League is overrun literally overnight in August, which Resnick frames as a diplomatic necessity to protect the Michigander counties from foreign threats. Resnick had plans to take Sector 9 for Ohio as well, but they joined Canada out of fear of invasion and bankruptcy, just before Resnick can claim the rest of the former state of Michigan. Let's check back on New York. By now, February 2059, the New England League has been crushed, and New York is focusing solely on destroying the Jersey rebels. On February 2nd, 2059, the Jersey Revolt is finally declared over after their leader is imprisoned. However, New York's government recognizes how volatile the region is, so they established the New Jersey Semi-Autonomous Region. Moving back to the Midwest, it's 2060 now, and the beast Ohio has woken up and is hungry once again. On May 5th, 2060, in yet another definitely not staged event in which the Lakefront Republic's rudimentary navy fires on Ohio and coastal towns, Ohio goes to war against the Lakefront Republic. This war is not so easily won, as Chicago and Milwaukee have the funds and population to put up much more of a fight than the Ford League could ever dream of. But eventually, in 2062, the Lakefront Republic surrenders and is annexed by Ohio. Ohio's last major land grab of the century comes with the Louisville Agreement, which I talked about in the previous episode. While the Lakefront War is occurring, Wisconsin and the Platte Republic find themselves falling deeper and deeper into debt. So they sell North Dakota and northern Minnesota to Canada to keep themselves financially afloat. Remember how I said President Resnick was very keenly aware of how bad the situation was going to get in America? Well, after Ohio's future as a dominant regional power had been set in stone, Resnick spent over a year carefully watching his neighbors. He wanted to pick the one that would be strong enough to help win a defensive war, should that ever happen, but also willing enough to work together with Ohio to make the continent a better place, and maybe assert some Ohioan will at the same time. On July 17, 2067, President Resnick meets with Texas President Ryan Melbourne, and they sign the Trans-American Pact, pledging to protect each other and help each other assure their place as the dominant forces of the continent. About 10 years later, in 2077, Ohio and Texas jointly release a statement known as the Resnick Doctrine, in which the former U.S. is put under the protection of Ohio and Texas. Instead of warning the European powers to stay out of the area, Resnick instead warns Canada and Mexico against meddling in American affairs. All of this happens while Joseph Capricci is sitting back and relaxing in the Oval Office, now in the nation known as Columbia. He does absolutely nothing to help the former U.S. states transition from unity to whatever their future may hold. Capricci easily wins the elections of 2060 and 2064, since the people electing him are the only people he actually managed to protect from the chaos and utter anarchy of the post-decree United States. Only in Columbia is he remembered as a hero. In the rest of the former U.S., everyone's hatred of Capricci is about the only thing they all have in common. He dies in 2110 at the age of 93, and his death is celebrated throughout the continent. So, that's what happens to the United States all the way to the end of the 21st century. I do have a much broader history of North America laid out for the next 800 years, so I'll probably cover all that in one episode. After I take you up to the year 3000, I'll come back to 2021 to cover the history of other continents up to 2100. There's also space stuff coming up on a yet-to-be-determined date, so there's that to look forward to as well. I hope you enjoyed this dismal future of the United States, and I'll see you all in the next one.